that's a bass, huh? That's a slab crappie, man. It just doesn't get any better.
The smallmouth here in Champlain is phenomenal.
Hey, what do you say, guys? Welcome back to another weekend roundup. I'm George, your Poker Outdoors guy. I hope you guys are out enjoying this weather, getting into some fishing. Weather has been just crazy. Cool at night, nice days. I hope you're out getting some of those smallmouth, those muskie, even those stripers out here in the lake. We're going to jump in. We got a great show tonight. First, I got to thank a few folks. Of course, Tim Keebler and Fin Seeker River Guide Service out here in the Delaware. You know, Tim's the premier guide on the Delaware. Book your trip now for this fall season and get in on some of that trophy action. Tim Keebler, 215-262-4811. Also, Tony Maggia Products. That fall run is coming, guys. It's up around Montauk right now, so we are watching the run as it comes down. Get those spoons, get those mojos, get out and get on those stripers, TonyMaggiaProducts.com. And the Fisherman Magazine. Each week, Jim Hutchinson and I bring you all that's happening in the New Jersey, Delaware, and out here in the Poconos. We'll give you some tips what's happening right here. The October edition is on sale now. Be sure you go get yourself a copy. That's the thefisherman.com. So we have a great show tonight. I got a good friend of mine, a guy we fished with a couple years ago, Josh and I. And we were up, went to Lake Champlain, and we hooked up with Captain Matt Trombley from Third Alarm Charters. I want to bring Captain Matt in, and we're going to talk a little bit about fishing Champlain. So let me see if I can bring Matt in right here. How you doing there, Matt?
Great, George. Thanks for having me. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I know you're really busy right now with the fall run. So it's thank you for taking time out to talk to us a little bit. It's
Absolutely.
Really good to see you. So what's been happening up in your neck of the woods? I mean, we've been working through COVID and all, and I think you're starting to get back in the swing of things with some charters, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a phenomenal summer considering a slow start, as you and I were discussing earlier, that we kind of had a little bit of a setback with COVID. And of course, the state of New York shut down all the chartering until June 1st. And I normally am on the Hudson River doing striped bass in the spring and the month of May. And I didn't get one trip in. So needless to say, between the loss of our drip boat steelhead trips in April and May, set me back a little bit. June and July, we had a lot of tourism-based folks up here in Champlain enjoying our wonderful fishery, and doubled and tripled my numbers from last year. Can't complain. It's been a busy fall.
That is really, really good. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about what kind of fishing you do? Hey, Jen Wong, thanks for joining us. Jen says, hey, Matt and George, good to see you there.
Hi, Jen.
Jen's one of our, he joins every week. He's the man.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Now, we've got a phenomenal fishery up here, not only in just Lake Champlain, but in Vermont. I've got a multitude of different inland lakes that we fish year round. But Champlain's my main target fishery. It's known as the sixth Great Lake with over 30 species of trophy target fish, everything from warm water, cold water, trout, salmon, bass, pike, muskie, you name it, catfish, crappie, panfish, perch, we've got it.
Right. I'll tell you what, I think one of my favorite trips is when Josh and I had a chance to go up and fish with you. And I think originally we were talking about going out for jigging some lake trout. And that's something I never done. So I was really excited to try it with you. Sure. Weather wasn't cooperating. So we ended up having to go for some smallmouth and largemouth. And what a great trip. I mean, you have such a lot of ammunition in your belt. So if one thing's not working, you can really get folks on fish anyway.
Yeah. Obviously, doing our lake trout jigging, I like to target my lakers in July and August. That's when those big trophy fish really set up on the deep water reefs. But the challenge of that time of year, we're fishing the bigger water, what we call the broad lake section. In some places, that's 12 miles across between Vermont and New York. And not unlike the Great Lakes, when the wind's blowing, it can be pretty rough and bumpy. Not that it's unsafe, but to do jigging, we've got to have pretty calm conditions. And when you're fighting 3 to 4 foot waves, the trolling motors working overtime, and you just can't get your presentation down. So I'm not going to waste people's time and try and jig when it's going to be a struggle. And as that day we took you guys out, we ended up sitting in the bays and working our bass and pike program.
Well, that was pretty phenomenal. I mean, you got us on some really good smallmouth, and my favorite fish I think I caught with you had to be that sheep's head. That blew me away.
We have a lot of people here in the Northeast look forward to the Lake Champlain International Fishing Derby. It is one of the largest all species derbies in the country. It's on Father's Day weekend. They're entering, I think, their 34th year of the derby. And the sheep's head is one of the fish that always places in the top numbers when it comes to weight in this fishery.
Oh,
And they're warm water fish. They're in the shallows. Anybody can catch them from shore. You don't have to be in a boat to catch them. And they're not a target fish that people really put a lot of time into, although that is changing. And yeah, they're always one of those surprise add-ons that we get in our trips. And man, do they have a tussle to them.
well, I'll tell you, I think the one I got, if I remember, was what, 7 or 8, somewhere around there. I don't think we actually weighed it, but it was close to it. And I think we were only fishing what, 6 or 8 pound ultralight, tackle.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you
8
really
pound
get your
finessing.
hands. You get your hands full with one of them, and it's just a beautiful fight. It had me.
Yep.
I still
You
talk
gotta
about it.
keep a light drag so you don't break them off, and they're a lot of fun.
They are a lot of fun. It was like the biggest smallmouth of my life there. That's what I thought it was at first anyway.
Sure.
Hey, Ann Glasgow Jr., good to see you from across the pond there. Ann asks us, he says, do you guys get jumbo perch too? Do you have any
We
giant?
sure do.
You do? Yeah.
Yep.
I know that's one of the things Ant loves fishing.
That's one of the things that Champlain has, both white perch and yellow perch. Usually in the summertime for me, because I'm so busy with the things that I offer, they're an accidental fish. And many times a perch will hit a spoon, especially in the springtime, we're trolling for trout and salmon, but obviously a big target fish in the wintertime. We're ice fishing. Ice conditions vary greatly from one end to the lake of another. For folks that aren't aware, Lake Champlain is 127 miles long from Whitehall, New York to the Canadian border. So it's a big chunk of water and varying conditions, especially in the wintertime.
Yeah, it's such a great place. I just love it up there. I can't wait to get back up. Hey, we have another guest joining us, Charles Wiedemann from ficklephilly.com. It's a great little site there. If you guys get a chance, check it out, ficklephilly.com. Thanks, Charles, for joining us. All right, so why don't you let's go over some of the fishing you do. I mean, you're a guide. Let's go over your program. Tell the folks what we do and kind of how you go about fishing. That maybe we can give them a few tips too.
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, I've been fishing and hunting my whole life. I started as a charter captain going on over 11 years ago when I got my captain's license. Started off mainly as a trolling captain. I have today now run 3 vessels, a 28-foot charter vessel that I do trolling trips on virtually from the 1st of May right into mid-September. We'll talk about how that vessel works. I now have a 21-foot Lund. I just traded my older Starcraft literally 3 weeks ago. Got a 2000 21-foot Lund Fisherman. It's going to be a great all-purpose vessel for early season trolling, but as well doing all my bass and pike trips on it, and as well as jigging for Lakers in the summertime. But I also do drift boat trips on the Salmon River for steelhead, November, December, and then the springtime, March and April on the Salmon River of New York, because I offer trips both in Vermont and New York, Lake Champlain, Lake Ontario when it comes to the big water, and then the Salmon River and some smaller tributaries to Lake Champlain here in Vermont as well with the drift boat.
Nice. So what are some? Let's go through some of the tactics you use. You said trolling for salmon and stuff. What's your program for that? What do you troll and how do you go about it?
There's obviously two distinct trolling patterns that we'll talk about as far as targeting salmon. And when you look at Lake Champlain, Atlantic salmon are our main target species, and we have some steelhead and brown trout as well. And we'll catch those mixed in, and we actually got some really nice steelhead on Champlain this year. Lake Ontario, I run trips out there in August into the mid half of September. And the trolling tactics we do with king salmon are obviously larger flashers and flies, some J plugs when we're late in the season, as well as some spoon program, maybe flashers mixed in with meat, as we call it, or cut bait. Mm-hmm. But that same program and mix of downriggers, dipsy divers, and copper lines will do the same thing on Lake Champlain in the early season, from late May through June into July, with just lighter tackle. We'll run downriggers, slide diver, dipsy divers, as well as either lead core or short copper lines, often planer boards, to keep a good equal spread, primarily with spoons. I don't run a fly pattern per se on Lake Champlain. A lot of 2 3/4 to 3 inch spoons, but also some smaller dodgers that can mix some different action in with those spoons.
Right. I guess that's just one of those things that if you ever haven't been up salmon fishing, it's a tremendous fishery. I've been up and done Lake Ontario a few times. I got to try Champlain with you. That looks like a target species. Maybe next time we get out, buddy.
Well, the biggest thing with Atlantics is they're the silver leapers. They love to jump. We run a lighter tackle system. For instance, on Champlain, I'll run a medium to maybe some days a medium heavy downrigger rod, but 12 to 14 pound test is virtually all the line you need to, again, keep good lure action with a fluorocarbon leader. On Ontario, I'll run 30-pound tests with a medium heavy downrigger rod. So again, you're talking kings that are going to push 20 to 30 pounds. You got to have something to steer them around. So I try to run stuff a little lighter in Champlain to have fun with those salmon, but they're notorious for popping a rigger and being up on the surface in 30 seconds and dancing all over the place. So it's fun to see those fish jumping. Always a little bit of my heart in my throat wondering when they're going to throw the hook when they're dancing around like that.
Yeah, I guess folks that aren't used to fishing and, you get something up in the air that would get you concerned a little bit because they're hard to manage as it is,
They are, yeah. And of course, on the downrigger, they're not tired when they come to the net. They're still zipping all over the back of the boat and makes it interesting trying to net them, but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy our fishery. Most of our Atlantics are going to average 3 to 5 pounds, but we get them pushing 10 pounds sometimes. If I could catch an Atlantic that weighs what a king does, I would never fish for anything else because they fight like unbelievable. They've got tenacity that you can't compare to any other salmon species.
Yeah. There's actually a lake over New Jersey that they stock Atlantics in, and they're not big. I think there are some big ones in there, but we've only caught them maybe 2 pounds. And again, on light line, little jerk baits in the middle of winter, you catch them. And what a blast there. They're a great little fish to catch.
Yes, they are. Yeah, like I said, in the springtime when we're trolling for them much shallower, especially ice out, we catch them on jerk bait, stick bait, same thing, and we're running, very shallow, in less than 10 feet of water. And again, what an incredible play because they're instantly on when they pop off that release on the planer board. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. Let's touch a little bit too on the Lakers. I mean, was the whole reason we went up there a couple of years ago was to talk about jigging up lake trout, which is kind of unique for me. I'm used to Lake Ontario, the big cowbells, and you use the little flatfish or something behind that right on the bottom, and that's been really successful for me hooking them up. But jigging, I've never tried, and that just sounds so interesting.
It is. It's a lot of fun to be able to feel that fish hit right in your hand when you've got them on. Our lake trout fishery is probably the strongest of all of our cold water species we have in a lake. I would put 3 to 1 lake trout numbers to comparative Atlantic salmon. And so we've got just a phenomenon. There is literally thousands of lake trout, Lake Champlain. Most of our Lakers are going to average 8 to 10 pounds. I've caught them up to 15. Lake record is just a touch over 20 pounds. But in the fall, those fish are spawning right now. So they're coming in to school up and then, look for their spawning grounds generally in mid-September through October. So in the late summer, those fish are looking for the most comfortable water. And that's lake trout really want to be in the high 40-degree water. And we really find them on reefs 85, 95 to 100 feet down in proximity to deep water where they can leave the reefs, go chase bait, and then come back to rest. Lake trout aren't super aggressive cruising fish like a salmon is. They're pretty lazy. I tell everybody that they're not going to go very far. Hence the reason when we troll for them, we're trolling slower. When I need to target them, 1.5 miles to 2 miles an hour, where salmon I like to troll 2.3 to 2.5. But the lake trout jigging program, when you've got good calm weather, find those fish stacked up on reefs. Again, a good 7-foot medium action spinning rod that's nice and stiff. I like a one-piece rod that you've got a lot of force. I prefer to use a braided line with a fluorocarbon leader, usually a 12 to 15 pound tippet a leader, and then 20-pound braid is more than plenty. Because when you're fishing that deep, depending on the jig size you're using, you've got to be able to get a decent hook set in them. Mono is obviously going to have too much stretch, not be able to have a hook set. So, yeah, when you've got the conditions, there is literally dozens of spots on the broad lake of Lake Champlain. And the jigging thing has really taken off in the last 6 to 8 years. A couple of guides over in New York really kind of brought it to the forefront. I think there was people already doing it, but they started pushing it in their guide program, and then did some filming, got some airtime, pushing it on Facebook. And now there's a fair amount of people out doing it. Not that there's an overabundance and you've got competition, but people have a lot of fun doing it because, it's the dog days of summer. The bass bite might slow down, and only early morning and late evenings you get a decent bass bite. But man, I've had days at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and every time you drop the jig down, a lake trout just pounce on it. So a lot of fun.
That sounds amazing. Jen was asking, what kind of a lure do you use? It's like a diamond jig. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you do use for jigging?
Sure. So, we do a little bit of everything. And a very good friend of mine, Tim Moore, pro staffs for Daddy Mac Lures as well as I do. And Tim is a guide over in Lake Winnipesaukee, New York. And him and I came out jigging 3 years ago here in Champlain. And he designed a jointed diamond jig with Daddy Mac Lures. Called the whisper minnow, or excuse me, the nervous minnow, not the whisper, the nervous minnow. And it's got because of that joint in the jig, it's got a lot more play in it. And sometimes we'll leave it bare. Sometimes we'll put a grub or a small paddle tail or something on it to give it some more tail action. But that's just one bait that we use. And I'll set up, say, 3 to 4 rods in the morning, and every one of them will have a different bait. I let the fish tell me what they want to hit. I'll drop the nervous minnow down. I'll drop a standard, 1.5 ounce bucktail, white and chartreuse, white and green, whatever, with a paddle tail on it. And then I might drop down a blade bait, 1/2 ounce to 5/8 ounce. Of course, the blade baits drop much slower because they're lighter. But as everybody knows, blade baits have that thump. And that thump and vibration many times is key to getting those fish to hit. The whole thing with a lake trout jig is electronics. You've got to be able to see the fish on the bottom and literally watch your electronics, and those fish will come right up and chase, and you can see them coming when they're chasing your bait when you bring it up. And that'll tell you the speed. Sometimes they want a super fast retrieve. Many times they want it just barely crawling as it comes up. Let them tell you what they're going to bite, and just keep changing up your cadence. And 90% of those hits are going to come on the chase, not on the bottom. Like if you were jigging for perch or something like that, they're going to chase it when the bait's leaving the bottom. They think their prey is leaving them. That's when they hit 3 action strike.
Well, that sounds really exciting, but it's almost like sharpshooting. You're just watching your sonar, spotting fish, dropping on a fish, and seeing how they react as you jig it up.
Sure. It's no different than fishing for panfish in 10 feet of water in the wintertime. You're ice fishing using a flasher or fish finder. You get to see those fish prey on a very small jig. Well, we're fishing in 85 to 100 feet deep with heavier jigs, but it's the same thing. And I've literally done it with a flasher that I ice fish with. You can see them do it on that too. So
that sounds interesting.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. Once you key in on the areas they want to be in, of course, Navionics or Lake Master charts are another key thing to be able to find structure they're going to be on, and they move around. I only target them, as I said, in July and August because I'm very busy with my trolling schedule in the earlier season. But it's not to say you can't jig for them in June. They're just a little more spread out, and they're usually a little shallower, 60 to 70 foot of water. Spend a little time looking for them with the electronics. You'll find them. They're there.
Nice. I think that's something we definitely have to try again, Matt. I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk a little bit too? You said you're doing some pike fishing up there. Tell us about your pike program.
Yeah, I think pike are one of those things that are quickly expanding into one of my top requests, especially this time of year. Of course, pike spawn in the springtime. They're the first fish to spawn after ice out in our body of water because they spawn in what I consider pretty cold water, high 40s. Just about the time the bass are just starting to bite, the pike are already on the bed. So in the springtime, they're in super shallow water, 2-3 feet deep, and you can see them tailing around, chasing and doing their thing. And again, we'll get them to hit in the spring once we're out chasing bass, in May generally. This time of year, the pike are wicked aggressive. They're looking to put on the feed bag just like the smallmouths are this time of year. And, they really are super comfortable in those mid 50 to 60 degree water, which is prime time right now. And everything from spinnerbaits, spoons, chatterbaits, big bucktails. I've got 3 different clients the next couple of weeks that are going to try them on fly rods. I do provide fly tackle. These gentlemen all have their own. And man, bring an 8 to 10 weight fly rod with you and hold on when a big northern grabs a 8 or 10 inch streamer fly. It's a riot. A lot of fun.
Well, you know, Josh Taylor, he was out doing some fly fishing for pike about a year or two ago, and he managed to get a couple. That's a blast on a fly rod.
Oh Lord, yeah, I've got another. I've made such a network of guides and captains all over the Northeast, and another good friend of mine, Steve Potoginski from down in Connecticut. He owns Pogo Guide Service. That's all he targets is toothy critters on the fly. And he says, "Man, you got a wicked fishery for northern pike up here. And if guys want to target them with a fly rod," and him and I not only fish Champlain, we fished one of the big tributaries on my side of the lake, Otter Creek, which is just a crazy northern fishery. Tons and tons of structure for them to hide under. And man, what a grin they'll put on your face when they come chasing the fly right to the boat.
Yeah, people don't realize they get pretty sizable northern pike, and they are a handful when you get them on there.
They certainly are. We are actually in a transition phase right now. The state of Vermont is actually talking about kind of changing our trophy fishery for northerns and muskies particularly. We've got a bunch of different proposals coming as far as changes in catches, release sizes, rates, all that type of stuff. But the northerns up here in Vermont, you can keep them over 20 inches. Where when you go over to, say, New Hampshire, a lot of places they got to be 28 or 30 inches and over to keep them. So they've got that trophy potential. We've got crazy numbers of northern pike in Champlain. But I think if we give those fish a little bit more of a chance to get up to that trophy potential that, say, Manitoba, Saskatchewan are producing 20, 30-pound northern pike, we can do it here. Most of my northerns are going to average 8 to 12, 14 pounds. But I have seen fish, particularly during ice fishing season, that'll push 20 pounds come through the ice on Lake Champlain. So there's some good ones here.
You got your hands full with that, no doubt.
Yeah, especially on ice fishing tackle, trying to pull a fish that size through an 8 or 10 inch hole.
Oh, absolutely love it. Love it. Hey, we got a question. We're going to go back a second. He says, lake trout are deep water fish. How is the survivability on the release?
Well, that's definitely a key point. You want to burp them. They've got an air bladder when you're pulling those fish out of the depths, and that's the plus of jigging versus trolling. Very rarely do I release fish when I'm trolling because of the size of the boat that I have. When my trolling tackle, I can't bend over the boat with high gunnels on, say, my big charter boat and take time to release those fish. One of the tactics I was talking about using blade baits, well, most of your blade baits come with treble hooks on them. We take the trebles and switch them out and put a single siwash hook on the front and rear. Much easier to release a fish with a single hook versus a blade, a treble. Obviously, your jigs come with a single hook on them. So that single hook is key to not chewing up the gills or the gill rakers on the fish. And as soon as we get them back in the water, we get a quick picture. I would say over 95% of my lake trout are catch and release. I get a few that people want to keep to put on the smoker. But taking the time to gently release their air bladder and not bringing them up from the depths too fast. I keep my drags real loose on my clients' rods and let them slowly bring them up. And you'll literally see the bubbles as they burp that air out of their air bladder.
Right.
That's pretty critical.
That was a great question, Jen. I hope that answered it for you. Thank you, Matt, on that. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we covered some salmon, we covered steelhead, we talked about lake trout, pike. How about just you even touched on it, the FLW is a prime spot for up in Champlain for bass fishing. Why don't you talk about that a little bit too?
Well, I'm pretty spoiled to have grown up on such a phenomenal fishery here, and I've absolutely been a trout and salmon nut since I could crawl. But I used to, dub around a little bit with bass tournaments, local stuff. I've never been a big tournament guy, never had the urge to go out and do tournaments. But anybody that follows the tournament world, and I do follow it pretty closely, actually, between FLW, Major League Fishing, etc., the Champlain fishery is on the top 5 of the Target, the FLW Tour. The Elite Series comes up here every year in June, and the guys just can't rave over the fishery. And what we have here, particularly our smallmouth fishery. Now, you can put together a 5 fish limit of mix of largies and smallies and produce a 17 to 20 pound bag just about every time you go out. And that's unheard of. There's a lot of fisheries you struggle with one species or the other. The northern end of the lake is known primarily as a smallmouth fishery. There is some great bass, largemouth fishing in the shallows, particularly some of the tributary areas where we've got weed beds. But the south end of the fishery, what everybody calls the Thai area, Fort Ticonderoga, The south end of the lake is more of a delta. It's all clay bottom, muddier water, huge expansive weed beds, and that's where you're going to find primarily the largemouth. So
Right.
a lot of the guys that want to target largemouths to fish down south in South US will run from Plattsburgh all the way down to Thai, where the guys that are good smallie fishermen are going to stay up in the northern end of the lake, literally from the Burlington area to the Canadian border. And just a crazy smallmouth fishery. I love fishing for brown bass. The bronzebacks are just such fighters. And in the spring and fall, it's not unheard of on a 6-hour trip to go out and do 30 to 50 bass. And your arm is just ragged tired at the end of the trip. It's a blast.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, you had us on some great smallmouth, and I think we caught a bunch that were, I don't know, a couple pounds, 3-4 pounds. I think you had us on a bunch, and it was what a blast on light tackle. I mean, I'll take a 3-4 pound smallmouth any day, but you know, it was really fun on light tackle too. So I absolutely love them.
Having a mixed bag of different stuff, especially in the summertime, once they've come off the spawn. We do drop shotting, Ned rigging, Nico rigging, multitude of stuff. But again, light braid tackle with light leaders, and man, just keep those dragons a little loose and let them do their stuff. It's a riot.
We got a couple of questions here, actually. They want to know, how was the ice fishing there? Did the lakes freeze over?
Yeah, absolutely. Phenomenal ice fishing, actually, but in the extreme ends of the lake. When you look at Lake Champlain, it runs primarily north-south. The southern end of the lake, as I said, is a shallow water fishery, pretty much from the Crown Point, Port Henry, New York side to over the Addison County, Vermont. From there south is under 40 feet deep, most of it under 20 feet deep. A lot of northern pike, white perch, yellow perch, catfish, sheep's head, gar, largemouth, you name it, we got it down there. The north end of the lake, from Colchester, Mallett's Bay, all the way up through St. Albans into Missisquoi, is phenomenal. Smallmouth, walleye, northern pike, and tons of white perch and yellow perch. And that northern end of the lake freezes quicker than most everything else. When you start looking at some of the smaller bays, Keeler's Bay, Carey Bay, Kelly Bay, they're protected bays that don't get beat up by the wind. And that's the key part, is finding places that the ice has time to freeze. And we offer ice fishing trips too. I do a lot of ice fishing trip closer to home on the smaller bodies of water in Vermont. A lot of the inland lakes that are surrounded by the Green Mountains, so the wind isn't such an issue, and they have a little higher elevation, so they freeze quicker. But you know, we do once the ice is safe, generally mid-January through February, have some phenomenal ice fishing up here, especially northern pike. Just a lot of fun. State of Vermont allows you to put 15 tip-ups or jacks out on the water. You know, the inland waddies, we're only allowed 8, which to me is more than plenty. I'd very rarely ever put 15 tip-ups per man out, but you can catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun.
That sounds great. A couple more questions. We got Jen Wong wants to know, is there a goby problem there?
No, not right now. And I say not right now because I'm an Ontario fisherman. Of course, we all know that gobies infested the Great Lakes, you know, in the last 15 to 20 years. Took a while to adjust to them. The biggest problem with the gobies, they eat all the eggs of the fish that spawn in the springtime, particularly smallmouths. But we don't have gobies in Lake Champlain as of yet. Alewives, yes. Obviously, smelt, rainbow smelt, been our top bait for the last 100 years. But we have shad, shiners, both golden and silver shiners, a lot of different stream fish, from fall fish, dace, that type of stuff. But no gobies right now.
Well, that's
I'm hoping we don't see them.
Yeah. We got one more question. Is there any walleye?
Yep, the walleye fishery took a drastic turn back in the 70s, and it really caused both the fisheries of Vermont and New York to take a hard look at it. Overuse, I say overuse, large creel limits was a big issue, and they have since changed that. Vermont has a walleye association that works in conjunction with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. They have a portable hatchery system that they strip the females of eggs in the springtime. And our walleye fishery is rebounding nicely. I've really, I'll say as a bycatch, because I don't target them much for clients, but we caught a fair amount this spring, mainly targeting smallmouth bass, especially when we were out jigging and found in the northern part of the lake some post-spawn walleyes. Of course, the walleyes spawn in April. Most of your locals are going to target the walleyes in the rivers, which is the month of May, after the first Saturday of May, when they're post-spawn, still in the rivers, heading back to the lake. But we are rebounding, and I hope to continue to see it that way. I'm working on a walleye program. One of the things that George and I talked about a little earlier, is I'm going to be doing brown trout trips in Lake Ontario in the spring, in the months of late April through May. And we're hoping, with the advent of my new Lund, that I have, to offer some walleye trips out on Lake Oneida, New York, as well in the month of May. So stay tuned for that. Probably be more information coming on our website and our Facebook page.
Well, that sounds amazing. Lake Ontario brown trout. If you've never done that, guys, you got to give Matt a call, because my biggest brown trout out of Ontario, I think, was about 25 pounds. They are just amazing fish. If you haven't got them, you guys got to get out there and try them one time.
Big old footballs, no doubt about it. They love to gorge on the gobies and, of course, the alewives and all the food that we have in the shallows there. In the springtime, you can catch brownies in 10 foot of water and running planer boards and literally ticking the planer boards off from shoreline some days. And that's the nice part. You don't have to run offshore like we do for kings in the summertime, but it's a lot of numbers days. You can put a lot of fish in the boat.
Yeah, well, it was one of those things, we were trolling. I think it was September for kings back in the, like the trench back up there through around Henderson Harbor and whatnot.
Sure.
And wasn't actually going for the browns. It just jumped on a flasher fly combo on me and took off. That's just had our hands full, that's for sure.
I'll tell you, my last charter of the season out of Oswego, I primarily fish out of Oswego, New York, in my late summer and early fall king trips. My last trip of the season last year, we got 5 kings, 7 or 8 browns, and a 6.5 pound smallmouth bass, all on flasher flies.
No
kidding. You just never know. It's a crazy fishery, and everything seems to be jumbo there because of obviously the bait and the fuel they've got in that lake. But in staging season in the spring, you just never know what you're going to hook up. Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, we got Anthony Arcabasio on the line here. Hey, how you doing, Anthony? Tony Maja Jr. for you guys that don't know. Good to see you there, buddy. So I'll tell you what, any other tips you think you can pass on to our guys? Why don't you tell us where they can get a hold of you first?
Sure. I do a multitude of different stuff, for everything from Instagram, YouTube, and of course, Facebook, and my website, thirdalarmcharters.com. I got the name because I'm a career firefighter, soon to be retired career firefighter. I've been in the fire service 31 years. Love to have a lot of the brothers from the first responder network, everything from firefighters, EMTs, law enforcement, brothers and sisters on board. I get a lot of female groups that want to come out and do team building classes and groups with me on the water. But I'm retiring from Burlington, Vermont, the fire department that I've worked for the last almost 24 years. I retire in December, Christmas week, as a matter of fact. So we'll be full-time next year, running trips year-round from ice fishing to lake charters. Thirdalarmcharters.com. Check us out.
Well, guys, if you really want a great guide to get on and you want a great destination trip getting up to Lake Champlain, this is the guy you got to talk to. He's really good. Been there, so I can talk from experience. So we'll get out again in the summertime, Matt.
Yes,
for
we
sure.
will, George. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I think we've answered all your questions. Matt, do you have anything to wrap up with?
No, like I said, check us out. Give me a call. We've really got a phenomenal fisher up here, but tell everybody to not let COVID get to you. No, 2020 has been an interesting year, but 21 is going to be a new year for us, and we're going to have a lot of fun. But I think we're going to see a lot of big changes coming, and we obviously get outdoors, enjoy what we have here in the Northeast, hunting, fishing, and have fun. Stay healthy, stay safe, everybody.
That sounds amazing. Matt, really appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Thank you so much. And we're going to go on with the rest of the show. Why don't you hang on for a few minutes, Matt, and we'll talk after the show. But for right now, we're going to continue on with some of the other stuff we got going, okay?
Sounds good, George. Thanks.
All right, Matt, we'll talk to you in a second. All right, guys. Well, I'll tell you what, before we jump into our trophy board this week, I just want to let you guys know this is the last show we're doing for this season. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I got some work here to do in the Lone Fish Studios. We're going to mix the show up a little bit. Hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll be back and bring you an even better show with some more tips, tactics, and tackle to make us all better fishermen. But I really appreciate everyone that's, supported us and appreciate all you guys for watching. But now we're going to jump right into our trophy board. Let's see what we got on our, what do we got for this week? We got Jim Lee Dorm. Let me get rid of those banners for you guys, just to make things a little bit easier. There we go. So we got Jim Dorham. He got some nice striper. This is down actually in Tennessee. So they got the same kind of freshwater stripers we do up here. And boy, I'd like to get down there and catch a few. Good friend Jen Wong's been hitting it hard over the past few days. He sent me a couple of fish. He's really been on them. Here's some nice bass he's got up in North Jersey. Here's Stan Sean out doing some bottom fishing for some catfish. Looks like he got into a bunch of them as well. Good friend Bayside Dave, he was up in actually North Jersey getting himself a bunch of largemouth. Some really good fishing up there. Local Debbie Perez was out getting on the bass. She said it was just so good to get out back fishing. So congratulations, Debbie. Great work there. Nick Canestro is out on the Susquehanna getting into those beautiful bronze back. Great work there, Nick. Addison Pashley was out fishing the Delaware as well. She got herself a few really nice catfish. Congratulations, Addison. John Lynch sent me this pic. He was out tog fishing, tog jigging crab down there in Jersey. So got his one fish tog limit there. Beautiful fish. Good work there, John. I got a last minute entry. Ray Young sent me. Why does it keep doing that? Let me just back up here a second, guys. Don't worry. So now my computer is going to give me problems. Well, I'll tell you what, let's forget about that for right now. Anyway, we had that. They caught a swordfish out there for Ray Young. That was just a beautiful fish. And thank you all for sending me the pics. Continue to send me those pics if you would, guys. Remember, I do the report for the Fisherman Magazine, and you might end up in my weekly report with Jim Hutchinson as well. So just keep an eye on that. So we're going to wrap things up here. I got the trivia question. Let me bring that up for you guys. Okay. So what is the IGFA record lake trout caught on rod and reel? It's the IGFA record for rod and reel. Is it 46 pounds, 57 pounds, or 72 pounds? This week's winner is going to get a gift certificate for a 1-year subscription to the Fisherman Magazine. So first person to give me the answer is going to win that subscription. 46 pounds, 57 pounds, or 72 pounds. The world IGFA record, rod and reel, lake trout. Jen Wong says 72. That is correct. Good work, Jen. Like you need another subscription to the Fisherman Magazine, but we'll send you this. This will go on the end of your subscription, so you'll get another free year as it is. So, yeah, guys, 72 pounds. It was caught in Great Bear Lake in 1955. So, yeah, that was a great lake trout. I'd love to see something that big. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up this show. It's been so great. I hope you guys enjoyed this too, and thank everyone that's tuned in and joined us. Like I said, we'll be back in a few weeks with a new set, new format, and hopefully bring you more stuff, give you all those tips you need to make better fishermen. Thank you so much. We'll talk real soon. Again, I got to thank everybody that supported us. Tim Keebler over at Fin Seeker Guide Service. Be sure you give Tim a call, 215-262-4811, TonyMyJobProducts.com and thefisherman.com. Be sure you guys go check them out. And don't forget, you can still email me at PoconoGeorge@outlook.com and check out the website at PoconoOutdoorsGuy.com. Please take a look, join in the conversation as well. So that's going to wrap things up. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk to you real soon.